Hello, this is Cheryl Wilson, and I wanted to do a demonstration for you of using alcohol inks, some mixed media, and some regular acrylics on watercolor paper, mainly using a squeegee, one of those squeegees that you use to clean water off a glass, and maybe one other or two other tools that will scrape the alcohol inks and the color into the paper, which is a really fun technique that gives you a really blurred underpainting that you can add mixed media papers, you can add scribbles, you can add thicker paint to it, and the outcome is just some beautiful art. So I hope you enjoy this video. Some of the tools I'm going to be using in this video are a squeegee that you use when you clean your windows, a bottle of water, another scraper that can be used gotten from the hardware store, some tape. I use the blue tape, or you can use white painter's tape. I use Sargent's Watercolor Magic. Any type of golden paint. You can use the high flow or the fluid, a type of acrylic inks, and these I'm using FX, and then I'll show you how to fix a mistake that you might happen when you're creating your art. I am just going to do a voiceover while I'm creating these pieces of art to give you a better idea. I can think better when I do a voiceover than when I'm creating, because my mind is in the creation when I'm creating. On this one, I'm just using a pencil, and I'm then using a graphite tool to start on the watercolor paper making marks. I have taped down the paper with a painter's blue tape, and now I'm going to be using some Sargent's Magic watercolor. I like to do this. You can do watercolor from the tubes, you can do watercolor from the trays, but I like this Sargent's Magic because it's very liquefied, and I've used this a lot in my art. And the reason why I'm doing this video is I want to show you how to create art with taking different types of mediums and using a squeegee and seeing the effect that a squeegee has doing different things on your art. So I squirted down without adding water on the watercolor paper the watercolor Sargent's color on this particular piece. I start by just moving the paint around, blending the black and the brown together. That black has almost like a slight blue tone to it, I noticed, but that's okay. Now I'm just squirting some paint on top, and you'll see me just do different techniques. This is the play mode. You can do anything you want. What I'm trying to create on this particular piece of art is just a light background that I can build on top of. This is the underpainting. I'm adding some more of the brown. Of course, I always resort to my fingers. I love painting with my fingers, and even if I say I'm not, I'm going to anyway. I'm grabbing another, I think that's a watercolor pencil or just a graphite pencil, and just making marks through the paper when it's wet. You have to be a little careful that you don't poke through, but you can still make beautiful marks by adding marks on top of anything that's wet on your paper. It dries pretty quickly because it's not a heavy layer. Now I'm bringing out some of the acrylic inks. You can grab any color that you want. I'm pulling out like a orange and a yellow and a black. You'll see me use some violet and some blues. But you can choose any of the alcohol or acrylic inks that you want. And there's the squeegee that I'm going to use. If I say alcohol ink in this, I'm always meaning acrylic inks. I use both, so my mind may resort to alcohol, but these are acrylic inks. And here's where the fun. I'm just taking the squeegee and moving the paint, and it really gives it a very flat look on the paper. You can do this on canvas, you can do this on watercolor paper. You can take these pieces much further than I go and use this as a basis. You can stop at any time. I have made all three of these pieces darker pieces of art. So at some point, if you want to stop where it's a lighter piece, that's totally up to you. It's your piece of art. So I'm layering at this point. Layering and then just moving the squeegee around to just see what marks I can create. Whatever is left on the squeegee of the acrylic ink is getting blended into the watercolor paper on top of the other marks that I've made. Now you could have left that to dry and that would have been a perfect piece right there. But as I'm in the play mode and I'm showing you just techniques, I'm just layering on top of that black some more of the color. My high flow white, I just got back from a couple weeks away from my studio. So that high flow, I had to actually dig my brush down in it because it was, I need to add more paint to the bottle. But I noticed I wanted to add a contrast to that black, so I'm just bringing up some of the high flow titanium white golden, and it brings a different contrast to it, which is nice. You see that I have lines there with the black, and now I'm adding some circular. I always add circles or figure 8. Now I'm adding some woody. Those are woody pencils, woody, they're like crayons, and I love these. Doing some sgraffito in the piece. I added some splatter because I had large marks. Now I'm adding some smaller marks just to give it some interest. So for the purpose of this video, I'm stopping here, and I actually like the piece. And you can frame this in a frame. I have shown this later in the video at the end. I'll show you how I just put this on top of a mat in glass. You can frame this behind a mat, light or dark. You can make this any size you want. So there's the first piece with the splatter, the different sizes, the white that has kind of just soaked into the watercolor paper. So on to the second one. Okay, now we're on the second piece, and I went ahead and I just put tape down. And this one I'm going to start with adding water onto the watercolor paper before I add any of the types of paints or watercolors. There I'm adding some of the brown watercolor, and it's the Sargents, and then I'm squirting in a little bit of that black. Again, that black looks a little bit like it has some of the blue in it, but it says black on the bottle. It's almost like a Payne's gray. I don't know. But it says black on the bottle. So I'm lightly pressing this time, but still pressing down enough for the watercolor to soak into the paper, just to give it a background and a underpainting to start. That again is the woody, and since the paper is wet, you see how beautiful the mark comes out. And then I'm going with the blue, that's really the black, a little bit of the blue, marking with another woody just to bring out the same color. It kind of gets hidden underneath, but it's still really pretty, and it always informs the next thing I do. So I'm going to the acrylic inks and using some of the same color scheme. Again, all these paintings are going to come out on the dark side at any point. You can stop when it's lighter. I just did all these darker because I was in a play mode and I just wanted to keep going. So this time I'm just twisting the squeegee around, layering on top of what was already there. The woody stays. The woody is more of a permanent when it gets settled into the paint. And I'm using just another tool. And again, you can leave that, or you can flatten it out, and I tend to flatten it out with the squeegee. I just wanted to add some different marks in here, and the only way to get different marks is sometimes to use different tools. So I'm squeegeeing it out again, adding some more fun marks. Some of these show up in the end painting, some of them get hidden, but some of those marks would never have been added to the painting had I not had them underneath. There's some more of the acrylic ink that I squirted onto the paper. Now I'm getting a couple more tools. That is a violet acrylic ink, and that tool is just something that you can get. It's like a cake scraper, or you can get it at the hardware store. I think it's a hardware store scraper that you use when you put putty on the wall and you want to get the wall flat. But you can look for any type of scrapers. I have a whole basket. I've shown that in one of my other videos where I just keep a whole basket of things, tools that I grab to add to my artwork. Now I'm grabbing a brush just to give some different texture and technique in this painting. I'm using a graphite pencil to scrape into the wet paint, and then I'm using, that's a catalyst with teeth on it, just to add additional marks. Any tools that you have around your art studio at this point you can mark into your painting with. I add dots, but of course I smooth them out. That's the titanium white with golden, not the high flow, just the regular white. I love scraping into the paint. Some of the scrapes stay because it's still wet. Some of it, when the paper has dried, the scrape won't show. I think I'm trying to adjust the light here to make it so you could see the paper a little bit better. I'm doing this early in the morning, and so I'm using the lights in my studio. So I grab the Squeegee again. That was like a gray color acrylic ink. Now I deliberately did not double time this video because I wanted to show you everything that I do on these, because they're not that long of a painting. Now I definitely could have left it like that, just with some fun, unusual marks, but I'm using the Squeegee again just to flatten them down because I'm just enjoying that Squeegee at the moment. And I really like those 3 marks that kind of got left there, so I'm leaving that. It's kind of like a nice contrast. At this point, you can add sgraffito if you wanted. You could add some more, well, there I go, I add sgraffito, and I'm doing it in white, so you can't see it as much of a contrast if I had chosen another color. That's another white woody. So this is when I've just dipped a small brush in a pool of paint to add contrast, and I've let it blend itself with any colors that I'm touching. And doing my circles, I love my circles. And this one, I feel it is to a point where I like it, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off the painter's tape. I was not as careful because this was a demonstration, and these are going to be matted more likely with how careful I was about putting the tape on. But that doesn't bother me. And then you can see the painting a little bit better now that the light is not a direct shine. It's really a pretty painting. So that's the second one, and I'm going to do a third one for you and show you what happens when I tear the paper. All right, now I'm beginning my last painting demonstration for you. And this one I'm just showing you how I add. This is a hard board that I just use. The reason is I tape things down to the hard board is, one, I can tilt it if I want drips, and it's just easier to pull the paper up. My table is got a lot of paint on it, and it's a little bumpy, and the tape lies a lot flatter when it's on a board, so you can just get any type of a board. And then you can be, as careful as you want putting your tape down. I am doing this as a demo for you, so I'm not as careful, but you can see the edges through that. And I could have been a little bit more careful about making sure I was exact. But I'm abstract and I'm messy, so I can't say that I am I'm not exact. So, on this one, I must have squirted some water because I'm adding some of the gray acrylic inks. And just using again that tool, and it had a little bit of black on it already, so that scraped off onto the painting. And I'm adding that's the watercolor Sargents, that is the black. Comes out a little bit blue, but it does say black on it. I wonder if they made a mistake at the factory and sent me, but it was brand new. I just opened it, so it's a little different that it comes out that color. That is the woody, and again, when you write, there's a wonderful writing tool, but when you write with it with wet, it just really comes out nice and dark. It's one of my favorite writing tools that I have. So there's this Squeegee, and I used some of the acrylic ink in black. Really contrasts with that watercolor. It's a different medium, so they look somewhat the same, but they will react to the paper just a little bit differently. So this one I'm just adding, this is a lighter painting, but I'm leaving, on this one you'll see me leave just a little bit of the white paper, and then I'm just adding some of that's probably like a yellow ochre acrylic paint. Use any color you want, and that's probably like a, I don't think it's a pyro orange, just a regular orange. Pyro orange is a very, very bright orange. But blues and oranges look nice against each other. So that's a nice underpainting that I've created there, in my opinion. There's that other scraper, adding different marks. Always add white. Love white. And the white on this, because it's still wet, it does blend in. It doesn't stay on top. If I waited till this had totally dried and added the white would be more pronounced. And you'll see later where it has dried and I add some white to the top and it stays more pronounced white. Now there's a thicker white that I'm adding. This is not the acrylic ink. This is Golden's regular paint, not the high flow, just the regular. So the inks tend to blend in a little more than the Golden regular thicker paint. Of course, that's pretty obvious because one is more liquidy than the other. So that's like a violet that I'm just adding. And I added the violet on this because I have them in the other painting. So if I wanted to sell these and somebody wanted to use them as a triptych, they could. Because they all have the same family of color in them. So I'm using the end of my paintbrush just to add scribbles. I love adding scribbles. I love sgraffito and I love scratches. I love scratches in the wet paint. And you'll notice how there was a dark area and I balanced it, well, didn't balance it, I just added white. So a lot of times I'll look for a light area and put a dark. I'll look for a dark area and put a light. And if there's circles, I may put lines. I may put something contrasting. I don't want the same mark. I don't want the same shape. I don't want the same size. So there's smaller dotted, kind of elongated lines. So I don't like the same shape. It kind of gives it interest. The eye likes a different shape in there. So if I do lines, I'll do circles. And if I do sgraffito, I might do more solid color. Here I'm adding, that is actually one layer of a napkin. And it has the little dots. And I love that. I put that napkin in a lot of my paintings, and I will have to put a finish on top of that to ensure that they stay adhered to the painting. So this is where I add more. Oh, this is where I rip the paper. It's still wet when I took this off. So if you put a little bit of wet on the paper, it will basically glue itself back down, and I'll show you how I clean up the smudge. And I'm doing this quickly because you'll see right there's another little smudge. And if you want that nice crisp clean edging, I use a like a white, it's a white kind of like a bleeded. I'll put the description below that keeps the edging nice and clean. So I don't know which one I like best. I like this one because it has so many different colors, different shapes in it. Each one has a quality about it that I like, and I think if all three of these were put with a matte and then a large frame, they would really look pretty, three together, maybe in a entryway or a dining room. But you can see how easy these were to create if you just let yourself play. Don't worry about creating your paintings for selling when you are in this type of mode. Whenever I do that, my inspiration kind of gets stifled because I'm too much worried about there's another layer. I always tell myself when I go in my art studio, I tell all the inner critic to leave, all the art teachers I've ever had, they leave the room, and even my own part of me that is critical just leaves the room. And what is left is the pure artist, the abstract artist that just wants to play and enjoy doing the art. And this is, I believe, Dr. Phil's. It's like a bleed out, and I will definitely show you the bottle, and I'll put the description below. But this is still a tad wet, but I wanted, for the purpose of getting this video done, I wanted to show you. I just use a small dry brush, make sure there's no other color in it, and I just clean up the edges, and it really cleans up nice. There it is right there. It's Dr. Phil's. I'll put the description below so that you can definitely get some of this. If you do paintings like this where you have an edging and you know there's going to be a time that you're going to have a mess on the edge. It just, I don't know any artist that doesn't have, bleeding at some point on the edges. Just a nice crisp, like a bleed proof. I just love the results of what this does. Again, I'm not sure if this one or the first painting is my favorite, but I think I like this because I added that mixed media in there. It was really kind of fun. It's some of my favorite marks. Okay, now that I'm done with these three, I'm going to go ahead and sign them and use a white, I think I use a gel pen on these. Oh no, it's a Sharpie. It's a white Sharpie. And just find a place on them that I will sign them. Sometimes I sign my art, sometimes I sign them on the side, sometimes I'll sign the canvas on the side. If I think the person might want to hang it a different direction, sometimes I'll wait and ask them after I sell it. But here's the three pieces. I hope you enjoyed this. It was fun showing these to you.